Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where it's our 13th year anniversary! 13 years of doing this show, and my schedule slippage has only gotten worse as time has gone on. At this rate, we'll celebrate the 14th anniversary around Christmas instead. And as is our tradition for the anniversary episode, we're back to the Spider-Man Clone Saga. Always an appropriate topic for this show, something that has far outstayed its welcome and never finishes when it's supposed to. As a reminder, last year we took a look at Web of Life, a 4-issue storyline where Ben Reilly was establishing a new life for himself. And at the same time, the books that focused on Peter Parker were running their own mirroring story where Peter was facing imminent death. Of course called Web of Death, which is what we're taking a look at today. And we should just jump right in, because like last year's anniversary episode, this is coming out much later than it was supposed to. Let's dig into Spider-Man, Web of Death, and keep using the Atop the Fourth Wall theme because I like it, and I only get to use it 1 month a year.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where dead comics rise. Linkara's gonna bring you all a Halloween surprise. Monsters from scary stories and adjacent categories. If you step into his laboratory, you won't believe your eyes. Linkara, is a man punch, or is he something else? Linkara, for the last few days he hasn't been himself. Linkara, brains, gore, skeletons and guts. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
Reading from a trade and no looking at the covers, though I do want to spotlight Amazing Spider-Man number 397s, for a couple of points. Primarily, we get to see the proper introduction of Stunner, a character we've seen a couple of times before during the Clone Saga reviews, in all of her C-shaped spine glory. Ladies just start wincing in pain from whatever the hell is happening there in this Liefeldian monstrosity. And secondly, Dr. Octopus's claw there looks like he's about to give her a wedgie in that swimsuit costume. The last Spidey/Doc Ock saga of all time begins here. You know, just like how Friday the 13th Part 4 was the final chapter, or how Freddy's Dead was the final nightmare. And yes, I am still justifying my effort to keep this in October. Why do you ask? We open with our old pal Kaine in the rain narrating his pain. I am Kaine. And I know you, Spider-Man. Though apparently he doesn't know that Spidey isn't telepathic. Better than you know yourself. I know you keep Popular Mechanics magazines hidden inside of Playboys, Mr. Science Major. The secrets of your past, the tragedies of your future, the depth of your loneliness, the intensity of your pain. God, even the characters in universe are starting to acknowledge what a friggin' disaster Peter Parker's entire existence is. But you, my friend, can never know me. And that's exactly how I want it. From the day I first drew breath, I stood alone, separate, without love, without family, without hope.
Oh, get off the cross. We need the wood.
So anyway, let's switch from Captain McBroodypants' narration to another, Spidey's, as he swings through the city. This is still early on in the Clone Saga, so he's recovering from the last major storyline from before Ben Reilly appeared, wherein he became even more broody and darkness no parents than Kaine is. However, he has pretty good reason to be bummed right now. He's dying, a result of an experimental chemical virus developed by the military that was put onto an eagle's claws that slashed him while he and Daredevil were fighting the owl. Because comic books. He insists on just continuing to move and ignore the pain surging through him. I'd probably head over to the Fantastic Four and see if there's anything they could do to help, but no, he doesn't seem to have any actual intended destination, when suddenly he has a vision of himself in a big tank with wires sticking out his back like he was plugged into the Matrix. He collapses onto a rooftop. What was that? like a door opening in my mind. Unfortunately, it was a revolving door and I just ended up back outside. Of course, this was during the time when they were hinting that Peter was the clone and not Ben. As he falls unconscious, the shadow of Dr. Octopus falls over Peter. All of these years, we've come together time and again, driven by demons neither one of us could fully understand or explain.
I call him Gambler!
I could crush the life out of you with little effort, batter your defenseless body until there's nothing left but bloody pulp. But then I'd have to go down to the mall to get another one, and that's like a half-hour drive. He says he can't kill him just yet. He needs to understand Spider-Man, having watched him since he last escaped from prison. You've changed, Spider-Man, and I don't like it. You used to be cool, man! Also, as moody and nice as this shot of him holding Spidey is, it does dawn on me that neither of these outfits should be holding up as much as they are in the rain. He wonders if he's just enjoyed fighting Spider-Man for so long because he's just such a noble person that you don't see as much anymore, or if he's just feeling reflective and nostalgic, especially because of Spidey's recent foray into, "Grr, I'm a dark vigilante, hear me scowl." And if what I've heard on the streets is true, if the Vulture has succeeded where the rest of us have failed, if you're dying... It's been like a few hours since he got poisoned as far as I can tell. The streets are apparently faster than Twitter for getting this info out there. As such, he lets him go and walks off for now to ponder and plan. Spidey awakens and realizes that he's very well and truly dying, thinking he might know who to turn to. Although he may want to first turn to Kaine, since he's standing, like, right behind him. Off at a bar, we see Stunner come in and proclaim that she's, like, the perfect woman and they should step forward and be enthralled with her and start making out with her right now, but there are no takers. Surprising, actually, since you'd think at least one drunk dude would give it a shot. But then again, maybe they become intimidated when no one's interested and she just wrecks the bar up. Just as I suspected, losers one and all. Well, I was gonna pay my bar tab and then hit on you, lady, but now I can't find my wallet, so... Sorry? The bartender pulls out a shotgun, ready to kill her for this, but then Dr. Octopus comes in and drops some money to pay for the damages, though admittedly at first I thought those were soda cans. Now take this. It should cover the damages. To your establishment, at least. Oh my god. Is that Sprite Remix? Doc Ock and Stunner head back to their apartment, and he tells her about his troubles lately concerning Spider-Man. A vibrant, intelligent opponent, so full of life and humor. And now, it seems, he's become a grim and humorless thug. I mean, at this rate, it looks like I'm the superior Spider-Man now. But who'd ever buy that? He expresses his own doubts about his identity to her, how he feels he's just the persona of Dr. Octopus now, and not Otto Octavius. But she reassures him that he's still a good person deep down and has humanity and all. But then she apologizes and has to vanish to his despair. As a reminder, Stunner is actually a woman who's projecting an image of herself in this form using virtual reality. This was back in the mid-90s when a lot of people were very confused about what the hell virtual reality actually was, and it's more likely that she's like a holographic projection. Although I suppose small miracles that they didn't fully understand what it was, and we didn't get like a Virtual Boy version of Stunner who's just red and black pixels that Otto visits in his off time. After Mary Jane returns home to do the primary thing that writers did with her during this time, because they weren't very imaginative, fret about Peter, we cut over to Spidey as apparently the person he was going to turn to was Mary Jane. Dude, I am the biggest champion of your marriage out there, but might I suggest that visiting a doctor or a scientist or hell, even a veterinarian at this point would be more productive in keeping you alive? However, he has another flashback to the cloning tank and falls off a roof, but Stunner manages to catch him, only to punch him so hard he flips upside down from the previous panel. She continues to attack, giving bits of her backstory of how her father encouraged her to be more girly and ladylike, and she resisted and wanted to do all the stuff boys did, and etc, etc. She also thinks that the superhero versus villain thing is more a game where everyone dusts themselves off and goes home at the end, but Spidey needs to angst at her. What I do takes a man and turns him inside out, breaks his spirit, shatters his world, poisons everyone he cares about. In fact, it's kind of shocking that I'm actually still doing it. God, I need a therapist or something. I thought you were the guy with the incredible sense of humor. Well, this I'm faux serious shtick is a joke. What are you anyway? Spider-Man or Spider-Infant? I'm sure somebody's pitched a Spider-Baby cartoon at some point. He admits to himself that she's right. He spent too much time feeling sorry for himself and hiding from the world instead of embracing life. She knocks him out as Dr. Octopus approaches, telling her that it looks like Spidey's condition isn't a ruse or anything, that he's in bad shape. And the first part of Web of Death ends with Doc Ock unmasking him, intending to find out what's wrong. That explains it. You didn't actually fight Spider-Man. This is Peter Parker. What are you talking about? Doesn't this just mean that Peter Parker is Spider-Man? No, you don't understand. This is not the first time I was fighting Spider-Man and unmasked him to reveal Peter Parker. I think the kid has a psychosis or something. Web of Death continues in Spectacular Spider-Man number 220. And yeesh, this is one of the problems with having 4 simultaneous Spider-Man books that constantly cross over with each other. You're gonna have radically different artists working on them at any given time, as we switch from Mark Bagley to Sal Buscema and Bill Sienkiewicz. And while the modern printing uplifts and brightens the colors from these slightly more faded colors of the original comic, it's still very noticeable when we move on to this issue, which is darker, more washed out, and everything just generally looks scratchier and more shadowy than the previous issue. It just creates this awkward discontinuity between parts of the story. It's not worse, mostly, just different, and I admit I am not fond of the art in this issue. Just look at poor Stunner on the second page. She looks unfinished. The prison psychiatrists may be right after all. I shouldn't be wearing my sunglasses indoors. Those pompous cretins have often rendered the somewhat annoying opinion that I am crazy. Just because I say that gophers are secretly plotting against me, they think I'm crazy. No, this is about the fact that he's actually trying to help Spider-Man, something that most people would think is idiotic at best since they're mortal enemies. But no, instead he's trying to find a cure for the chemical virus killing him. It's been hours and he's having trouble coming up with an antidote. The formula: it isn't reacting as expected. But enough about my baking soda volcano, let's work on the virus now. He shoves aside his work, of course destroying something because that's gonna speed up this process. Stunner tries to reassure him that he owes Spidey nothing. He's only a macho vigilante who used to get his jollies by trying to pound the daylights out of you. No! Our relationship goes much deeper. Always awkward when you have to explain to your new girlfriend why you still care so much for your ex-boyfriend. Spider-Man has always been my perfect foil. Courageous, decent, and self-sacrificing. In so many ways, he was the man I could have been. Might have been, if only. Anyway, I need him to get better so I can go back to trying to murder him. Realizing that there are people who might want to know about Peter's condition, particularly Aunt May, Otto tries to call her, but MJ's Aunt Anna has to inform him about Aunt May being in the hospital. Otto once tried to marry Aunt May. Look, Spidey's been around for 60 years, a lot of stuff can happen in that time. And he feels bad about her being in this state, so he sends Stunner off with a bouquet of flowers for her. Nearby, Kaine is watching. And I guess the art team didn't get the memo on what he's supposed to look like, because instead of the face mask, we see what looks like his actual face, but with some weird strands of a mask covering half of it. Or did he cut himself shaving and this is just an overly elaborate bandage? And I will not allow the likes of Otto Octavius to interfere with the path I must blaze for Spider-Man. How dare he try to save his life? He should have left him to die so he could continue on that path I'm blazing for him. After a scene of MJ worrying about Peter while standing over Aunt May, okay, I finally figured out the real reason the Clone Saga went on for so long. It wasn't marketing pushing them to keep it going. It wasn't them continually flip-flopping on whether Peter was the clone or not. It was because of all the endless padding. Seriously, how many pages of the Clone Saga were wasted on the same points? Mary Jane fretting and Aunt May lying unconscious in the hospital. Like, after 13 years of doing this show, I still haven't done the story where she wakes up, even though we've done some stories that happened afterwards. It's not that the Clone Saga is overcomplicated or poorly delivered on its promises. Although those points certainly stand, it's just that it takes so long for anything to happen. Ugh. Anyway, Otto thinks he has the solution and administers it, Peter's body spasming and breaking free of his restraints. Or, as Otto says, he's literally ricocheting off the walls. And then he's able to leap through a window and just bounce around everywhere in the city, bounding from building to building, propelling himself an incredible 30 feet or more with each spectacular leap. He impulsively hurls himself forward. His sole desire is to escape the pain. Yeah, Peter routinely wrecks his place whenever he steps on a Lego. He finally falls unconscious again, and Otto saves him. I remember unmasking a considerably younger Peter Parker many years ago. For reasons which I now forget, I refuse to believe that you were truly Spider-Man. Well, it was like 25, 30 years ago. You're bound to forget some stuff. Peter wakes up again, but fully masked and on the rooftop. While he's confused how he ended up so close to the brownstone where he lives, he realizes that all the symptoms from the virus are gone, so he thinks his immune system was able to beat it. Oh, gotta love this yes pose. It's like he fist pumped so hard he went to his knees. No more doubts, no more regrets. The dark and moody spider is finally gone, and only the friendly neighborhood web slinger remains. It's a good thing there's nothing else in my life to cause angst or worry or depression. Kaine observes Mary Jane heading home from the hospital, where she has some news for Peter if and when he ever shows up. Kaine wishes he could guarantee her survival, since he keeps having visions of her death, but he has a slow, sexy single tear when he realizes he cannot guarantee it. Also, his eye changes from red to orange because, again, I don't think the artists quite understood what his deal was. Spidey has flashes of memory of being treated by Doc Ock, but he writes it off as an hallucination from the virus. He finally heads home and changes out of the Spider-Man outfit. I've been living in this costume so long, it's almost like I'm shedding a second skin. Yeah, there ain't enough detergent in the world to get the smell out now, Pete. Best to just make a new one. Mary Jane arrives, and the two have dueling narration of what they believe the other thinks of them, but ultimately being like, no, let's just get together and make out. And by the way, have I mentioned lately how much One More Day sucks, and the latest supposed reversal that was coming on it didn't end up happening, but instead retconned Sin's past, which, while good, required yet another overly elaborate explanation where one of Spidey's villains was behind it, because these villains are starting to rival Batman for all the ludicrous amount of plans they create? What? I'm not bitter about modern comics at all. Why do you ask? Otto, watching this from the street, walks away all satisfied and happy, while MJ and Peter enjoy a romantic evening of pizza and orange juice. Might as well have been grape jelly and mustard. Ugh. As the two finally stand reunited. But, as Otto discovers as he smashes more of his stuff, I wonder if Stunner has to clean that up every time this happens. His antidote only dealt with the symptoms of the virus. And only temporarily at that. Peter wakes up in terrible shape, needing to tell MJ the truth about it, but she drops a bombshell in return. She's pregnant. And Dr. Octopus is the father! We continue in Amazing Spider-Man number 398, where apparently Doc Ock went all the way back to his place to smash his test tubes before going right back outside Peter's brownstone again.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
Also, Mary Jane's shirt has changed colors between issues.
Great continuity!
Peter's elation about his impending fatherhood is cooled when he remembers the virus, but decides not to tell her about it. Think I'll jump in the shower and then we can head over to the hospital and see Aunt May. Oh good, it's been a whole 5 minutes since he got to stand around and look sad at Aunt May. Gotta get back to the grindstone!
This is starting to sound like a bad comic book plot.
They say people can actually hear you when they're in a coma, and we've just got to tell her the good news. Probably can smell you too, hence why I need to take a shower. You might want to as well. Just the proximity to me probably infected you. Hey, like a virus! I'll tell you why that's funny later. And soon, at the hospital, he begs her to wake up, and we have comatose Aunt May narration, how she feels warm and loved and all that. But your voice, it's got such a hold on me. Tethers me to the world. Just let me die already, Peter. Seriously, just let me die. The worst part is that this might not even be Aunt May. Norman Osborn replaced her with an actress after her stroke, but before he revealed himself to be alive, who was genetically modified to resemble her, because cloning science. So this narration might be coming from some critically acclaimed community theater lady. And all because John Byrne, who later took over Spider-Man, said he wouldn't do it unless he could bring her back to life. Spider-Man's history and continuity is just retcon after retcon. Instead of elaborate fan wikis that describe all this nonsense, you should just put this in. Peter and MJ go out for a romantic evening together, but the virus hits Peter again while they toast. Detective Raven, you know, that guy who was really only here to lead us to the trial of Peter Parker and then vanished, tells the restaurant to get him some water and calls someone to clean up the broken glass, because I guess we need to set him up a bit? I don't know, maybe this was just to get a fingerprint sample for comparison or the like. Truth be told, elements like Detective Raven in the Clone Saga just start blurring out in my memory because they don't actually play a large part in the big picture. It's easy to forget that certain stuff happened when it doesn't actually make an impact overall. Peter's spider sense goes off and he spots Doc Ock silhouetted in front of the giant frickin' moon. Although this one might not just be artistic license, but Peter hallucinating from the virus. He quickly changes, and I guess it's winter now, because it's snowing instead of the heavy rainfall from before. Climate change is even worse in the Marvel Universe. Tomorrow's gonna be a heat wave in New York at this point. Peter attacks, sick of villains getting involved in his life, but Ock says he isn't here to fight. I knew the serum I gave you would only provide temporary results at best. Yeah, I always knew it was only going to be temporary. I'm not trying to save face or anything. He convinces Spidey that he's found the proper cure now and wants to help him. Because you've provided a certain continuity in my life. It's a continuity that's retconned every 6 months, but still. Stunner, meanwhile, has gone off to Central Park to rip up some trees when Kaine suddenly yells at her to stay away from Dr. Octopus. God, we've got Doc Ock in love with Peter, Stunner in love with Ock, now Kaine in love with Ock. I don't know why anyone watches regular soap operas when this stuff was happening in comics. I stole this from the late night double feature set. At Otto's lab, Spidey is worried about ingesting the cure, just a bit too distrustful of Doc Ock, but he's finally convinced to do it. He takes it, but like any cure in fiction, it immediately makes him double over in pain and fall unconscious again. And then Otto puts on his sunglasses like he was David Caruso. "Come into my parlor," said the spider to the octopus. So Peter goes into some kind of near-death experience as he starts floating towards heaven, even running into Nick Katzenberg, a sleazy photographer and supporting character of the book who died of lung cancer. Like, of all the dead characters he'd run into on the way to heaven, that's the one? Anyway, Peter refuses to accept that he's dead and falls back down to Earth, meeting with Aunt May's spirit. She recounts for him about how much he loved Peter Pan as a kid, which means this is probably the actress he's talking to, because the Peter Pan thing comes back in the comic where May woke up and died. So thanks for taking anything beautiful or poignant and making it meaningless. Marvel Comics, we don't respect your emotional investment in our characters. Inspired by her words, Peter heads towards the light to end the issue, and we move into the final part of Web of Death, Spectacular Spider-Man number 221. We're back over to Buscema and Sienkiewicz for pencils, with John Kalish for coloring, and yeah, it was a mistake to end with this art team, in my opinion. I'm not really fond of the scratchy pencils for this, and the colors are now all washed out. We had some pretty work in the Amazing Spider-Man issues, not anything groundbreaking, but the colors were bright, and the soul conversation with Aunt May was actually kind of beautiful, and now everything just looks really murky for some reason, as if we switched from watching a movie on an HD screen over to an old CRT TV. Hey, I'm connecting this to the Ring reviews now, see? It's all coming together. The spirit of Uncle Ben grabs hold of Peter and talks with him, soon joined by Peter's mother and father. Those are my parents. My real parents! Actually, no, we're the robot duplicates of your parents. Your real parents are in hell, go figure. We all wish we could have found a way to warn you about those fakes, but that's the past. There ain't no simulacra, no doppelgangers or imposters here. I'll bet there aren't any clones either. And I love how Peter's dad and Uncle Ben just kind of exchange a look. Well, that's something you don't have to worry about anymore. I could make a joke about this, but honestly, I kind of love the idea that Peter's family would still embrace him and love him, even if he was a clone. It's kind of sweet. We're all so proud of you, Peter. You've led such a responsible, exemplary life. You've earned your rest. Unlike me, May, and your father, boy howdy could we tell you about the summer job we had at a resort. Also, I'm the redhead now. Peter, however, is suddenly pulled back to life as Doc Ock zaps Peter with a car battery or something. The cure was a success, but Peter's suffering heart failure and he's trying to bring him back. Also, kinda looks like they drew a nipple on one of Stunner's boobs in the background. It's not, which is why I'm not censoring it, but still, did no one catch that? The soul of Harry Osborn grabs Peter to try to prevent him from returning to life, saying that he needs him here to try to make amends for his own past misdeeds, as his face transforms into the Green Goblin.
We're in the bad place.
No! Death is not the refuge I imagined! I can't hide here! You heard it from the man himself, not even death would bring Peter peace. No, he just says he chooses to return to life despite its hardships. Otto, giving Peter CPR, finally brings him back. He tells Stunner to go and do a task that he explained to her, and she goes off. As Peter recovers, Otto says that obviously he's wondering what this whole thing means as to the future of their relationship going forward, and Otto just wants to return to the status quo. He doesn't want to be a hero, he just wants the challenge and inspiration that Peter brings in their confrontations. Hell, just to make sure Peter doesn't feel beholden to let him go for saving his life, he's called the cops and left an anonymous tip about his location, and the SWAT team soon arrives to arrest him. Our relationship has deepened in ways we could never have foreseen, Spider-Man. Having you in my debt will only sweeten my inevitable victory. It'd be funny if Doc Ock just kept coming back to save Peter over the years, not actually fight him anymore, just do whatever he can to ensure that he lives for a final battle between them that never happens. He says how happy he is that Spider-Man will always be waiting for him once he escapes from prison. Yeah, I guess I will. Cut to Peter in his underwear playing Sega Genesis, occasionally looking at his watch and going, "Jeez, has he escaped yet?" Peter swings off in this, frankly, god-awful, muddy splash page that's been turned on its side that I'm sure is supposed to be inspiring, but just as hard to distinguish what the hell I'm looking at. It's funny. I'd normally be going batty with paranoia right now. My greatest nightmare has become a reality. Despite Otto knowing his secret identity and being in a position where he could attack May or MJ, he doesn't think he actually will. And hey, he's gonna have a baby, so things are looking up. Although not for MJ, who decided to clean up the rat hole of a home that the brownstone had become the last few months. Still, Peter comes in with flowers and an Acme baby crib, which means it's either going to find Carmen Sandiego or explode. Or both. Meanwhile, Stunner prepares to bust Doc Ock out, but is knocked unconscious herself by a gas grenade from Kaine. Soon, much to the shock of the cops, who I now see are all wearing this ugly olive green jumpsuit and helmet, and Otto himself, Kaine rips open the roof of the police truck. Something's wrong. That's not Stunner! Although if it is, I'm kind of into the new look. Doc Ock and Kaine engage in battle, with the good doctor boasting of how he's gone toe-to-toe with Spidey, Daredevil, and Captain America, and isn't going to be defeated by someone like him. So anyway, Kaine kills him. Yeah, this was a plot point that is controversial, potentially stupid, and yet makes sense all the same. Have Kaine kill Dr. Octopus to show just how much of a threat he is. Better than killing a hero to do that, but at the same time, it's still killing a longtime member of Spidey's rogues gallery to prop up frickin' Kaine of all people. And this was a death they intended to stick to. As the Life of Riley interview and essay pointed out, we actually see Otto's dead body. If you see a dead body in comics, it's usually a sign that it's meant to be permanent. Tom DeFalco didn't seem to really have his heart in doing this and would later resurrect him. A shocking spoiler, I know. And you can kind of tell, because for all the boasting Otto made about fighting top-tier heroes, this fight is not exactly impressive. Kaine dodges some shots, grabs Otto, and then does his Mark of Kaine thing that burns his face. The worst part is that Kaine says he's doing this for the sake of some evil, nefarious scheme, needs Stunner as a pawn in that scheme, and as far as I can recall, no, he doesn't. This has nothing to do with anything. Still, points for presentation, as this is done while Peter and Mary Jane are assembling the baby crib, and the narration talks about beating the odds, that fairy tale endings can come true, and people can live happily ever after. And so our comic ends with that note, as Stunner cradles the dead body of Dr. Octopus. This comic is not great, but it's not terrible. Its biggest sins are that half of the artwork is not that good, which I've explained as we got into it, and that it is padded to hell. Aside from continually going back to Aunt May or MJ fretting without adding anything new to otherwise well-trodden ground, Otto's constant speeches and narration about how awesome Spider-Man is start to wear a little thin by the end. And honestly, I don't know how accurate the characterization is for him around this time, whether he really had that much respect for Peter by the end. It's certainly possible, but it's equally possible this was just invented to add some pathos to the character. Although honestly, when viewed in isolation, I kinda dig it. It makes a nice contrast to someone like the Green Goblin. He knows Peter's identity and will use it to his every advantage to hurt him. Instead, Otto's too classy for that. He enjoys the actual thrill of supervillainy and that it drives him to be better in response. Having the hot new villain kill the old one does feel rather disrespectful, though. Clearly they wanted Doc Ock to leave on a high note by having him save Peter's life and make it all the more ironic that he dies while Peter gets to live. But instead, it just comes across as, get rid of the old corny villains. Enjoy our new, darker murder villain. Stunner's not given a lot to work with, but it's clear they're setting up for her to do more against Kaine. Maybe even have her be an associate of the new Dr. Octopus, who we saw premiere back in the Greatest Responsibility storyline. So it's not too terrible. But yeah, overall, the story is pretty decent. Not the best, but it's definitely a shining bit of hope for the character as he finally sheds the grim and gritty bullcrap that he'd been saddled with for a while, and get things ready for shuffling him away for when Ben took over as Spider-Man. Still, as is evident by pretty much all the stories of its era, it's way longer than it needed to be. Even the Heaven stuff feels more like padding despite the Peter Pan thing that was set up for later. Certainly better than Web of Life was, though man, Kaine had a busy week, didn't he? Next time, we begin Secret Origins Month. Although, with all the schedule slippages, we sadly have to drop one again, and we're only having 3. Still, when we return, let's head over to DC for the first appearance of a Bat character who also didn't start in comics.